Hello, and welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast. We have a very special episode for you today, so stick around. All right, welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast. Today we have with us Jerry Chacon from Chacon Lofts, creative producer, entrepreneur with a YouTube channel, Roll Call. Jerry, thanks for coming on and talking with us today.
All right, thank you for having me here, man.
So let's get into it and let's hear about your own background with pigeons and rollers in particular.
Well, I'll tell you how I got into the rollers. I was a kid in California, LA area, and at that time it was a hotbed, man. I mean, everybody around my area, man. I had people like three, four kids in the block, flying pigeons, and then you got another four or five on that block. So it was pretty cool, man. I got introduced to pigeons that way, and the way I actually got my pigeon is every Sunday I used to go to my uncle's house in LA, and one day I was playing ball in the backyard, and I accidentally kicked the ball in a neighbor's yard, and I ran and jumped on the wall to see if I could see my ball. And man, this guy had lost all through his yard, man. And that was it, man. So I went over, knocked on the door, and asked for my ball, and he went out back, brought the ball. And as he was closing the door, I said, "Hey, Mister, what do you have in your backyard?" And I said, "I climbed the wall and I saw a bunch of cages and birds." He said, "I raised pigeons." And man, he took me for a tour, and that was it, man. I got hooked. And the following week, I went back. He blessed me with some rollers, and some Oriental rollers, and I went back home. And man, it was on competition versus the neighbors. You know what I mean? And yeah, ever since then, so, I just fell in love with the birds, man.
Yeah. Oh, it's like the Sandlot. Instead of a scary dog, you jumped the fence and found a bunch of pigeons, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, man. And then what was crazy is years later, man, I eventually got out of the birds. I started, youth problems, a lot of gang problems around where I was at, and I got involved with all that, and then I got my birds. I got my coop hit about three times. They stole my birds, and then it just became to a point where I was just got into that life and got out of it, and many years later, as an adult, here I am in Arizona, and like in the 2007, I started getting some birds, and I said, man, let me see if I could get a hold of this guy, and I reached out, I emailed somebody, and then that somebody emailed somebody, and then finally that guy reached out at me, man, and I told him, hey, man, I was that little kid, and then he went ahead and blessed me again with some birds, and on and off, out here I was with getting into birds, getting out, I ran into a lot of mistakes. I wasn't ready for actually cultivating and actually enjoying my birds. I didn't know about having a good setup or anything like that. And that was right where social media was starting to get very active, and so I'll be searching and searching, YouTube videos, and there wasn't really much out there. I mean, I got a few videos on guys on the rollers and stuff like that, but I mean, I ran into Rick Me's articles, his webpage, and I read everything on there, and there's a lot of people used to comment, but it wasn't like social media, so I was like, man, so it was all cool. I started reaching out at certain people, and I came across one of the well, actually I came across out here with the Arizona Pigeon Club, right?
Okay.
And through there I met this one guy that had Rigby birds. So he was getting out of the birds because his wife passed away, and he wasn't really into the birds no more. The falcon was killing him, and so he's like, he blessed me with the birds, and then they're Rigby banded birds, and I got a hold of Rigby, and then I became good friends with Rigby. And ever since then, man, I was like, man, I need to find a way to kind of start promoting or advertising more of this, because I started reading books and all that, but man, it takes so much of your time too.
Yeah.
So there was my journey to figure out a way how to start promoting in social media and taking advantage of social media.
Yeah. And how long have you had that YouTube channel going for now?
Oh man, I got the very first video on there. It's like man, I would say 2014, I
Hmm.
think.
Okay.
And yeah, so that was my first video way back then. But yeah, man, I didn't know nothing of videoing, editing, none of that. I started asking a few people, and they wanted to charge money and this and that. I was like, man. So there was my journey, man. I started looking for learning how to do it myself, and I got enrolled into community college out here, and they have a film program out here, and I did that for a few years, and man, I got real good at it. So that was where I started perfecting more videos, and then of course I had it in my mind that I wanted to do documentaries and do a podcast, because back then was the podcasts were starting to hit right where the COVID area, you know what I mean? And so the podcast started getting real popular, and I was like, man, I'm gonna do a podcast on roller pigeons, and I wanted to do like a podcast on all pigeons because I was into fancy pigeons, everything, I love
Oh, right
pigeons,
on.
period, you know what I mean? But and then I was like, man, I started the podcast, and it got pretty popular, and at first I started doing it just like a recording, and then I'll put it out there, and then but my mission was like to start doing a live streaming, and then I went from there, man. It went pretty good. It's still going pretty good, and then I started going around traveling a lot to people's lofts, and I started filming and editing and making videos. But I found myself like, you know what? I'm spending too much money, out of my own pocket to kind of entertain somebody else. I wasn't getting a lot of people wanting to, hey man, I was getting a lot of, hey man, I like what you're doing and this and that, but
Yeah.
don't know help financially, you know what I mean? So I was like, man, I need to kind of figure out how to make it to where I could get support, to where I could pay for my travels and stuff like that.
Yeah. You travel a lot too. You've been to some pretty far off places, looking at lofts.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, I got rig these birds. I
Yeah.
jumped in the plane, went to Washington, and I went to see Rick Me, and I wanted some birds that came out of Utah, right? And then I'm gonna tell you this little story that I went to a convention, and I sat in it. Well, actually, we sat on a table, and then these two guys came to sit with us, and it ended up being Jay Starley, rest in peace. And to me, he's a legend, man. So he was out of Utah, and I was like, hey, man, you're from Utah? And I showed him some pictures of some birds, and I told him, hey, I got these birds from this guy. And he goes, yeah, he was part of our club, And I said, oh, what? He goes, yeah, those are my birds. I said, man. And then so I got his number and everything. I said, you mind if I go pay you a visit? He said, sure. So later on that year, I drove all the way to Utah, man, and I got to hang out with him, and
Nice.
he blessed me with some birds. So yeah, man, I mean, like I go way beyond, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, so I started to figure out like a way to get support, and I opened up a Patreon. And a Patreon, it's a membership. Pretty much is what it is you go on that platform and you see all my documentaries, my original podcast that I had going on there. But I got a lot of stuff on there, man, a lot. That money that I generate, I save it, then I plan my other trip,
There you go.
and now it's working out to the point where I'm able to travel, take care of my expenses, man. So yeah, it was a journey, man. It was like a lot of work, but it's starting to come together to the point where I'm able to do it, promote as much as I can right now,
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And so, because you've gone around, you've talked to some, I mean, you've even been to, I mean, you've been to some of these just legends in the roller world. You
Yeah.
talk to all these experts. I mean, what are some of the things that you've picked up and that you've learned from just talking to some of these guys?
The main thing that I've picked up is what I feel is the most important when it comes down to rollers, you know what I mean? And of course, everybody likes to go around and maybe get the best birds and fly the best pigeons out there. But what I've learned from a lot of these guys is conditioning pigeons, man.
Mm.
And that's very, very important in this hobby. And a lot of people might not realize that. And I never realized that, you know what I mean? And I've done my research on this, you know. You have everybody always saying, what do you feed the birds? How'd you feed them? What, you know, it's not what you feed them at the time. It's how you condition them to get them to that fly, you know? So I got to understand that real good. And going around and listening to these guys, it's like, oh man, you know, this is a gem right here. This is gold right here. You know what I mean? So I started learning all that stuff, and I'm gonna go ahead and video this, you know, and put it in our archives. And at first I was like, man, you know, a lot of guys keep a lot of secrets and they don't like a lot of people knowing because it's
Yeah.
competition behind this, you know what I mean? And I was like, you know what, man, it was so hard for me to get a lot of information. I'm just gonna start putting it out there. And that's what I did, man. I started putting it out there for everybody to know. You know, I mean, I could have been selfish and keep it to myself. You know what I mean? But I put it out there for everybody, and that's main important, man. If everybody could pick up how to condition your birds, man, I'm telling you, you start understanding just like what they need just by observing how they're flying. You know?
It's all about everybody getting better together and real competition, not just the
Yeah.
the secret keeping and trying to undermine your competition. Man, everybody gets better at the same time. That's way. That's great.
Like, I mean, because you know, you have those regions where the same guy always wins and the other guys, they really don't put 100% into it, because now they're like, you know what, it might be the birds, or they get a lack of wanting to go further with this. But now you're hearing some of the top guys talking about what they're doing. Now you got people interested. Now you got people applying this stuff, you know, in their backyards, and starting to see different things happening from how they're how they had it going on with their training, you know. And it's very important, man, because that just keeps the competition going strong, you know.
So you kind of talked about how feed is definitely something you hear over and over again. Feed controls this, and you can do this with this, and what do you think? Do you think feed would be kind of one of the most misunderstood or common mistakes that a new flyer is making, or what do you think that would be?
I don't think it's basically just like to say is the feed. It's just acknowledging what to feed, like just being able to visualize and understanding what's going on with the birds, and saying that okay, they're too strong, right? It's more acknowledging the diet itself, you know, and that the diet would tell you what to feed. Like for instance, if your birds are too strong and flying on one wing, they're flying, they're elevated, they're not doing much, then you slowly got to break them down. And what I do, I don't break them down with taking away feed. I give them the feed they want, you know, what they want to eat, all they could eat. But then what I break them down with is the type of seeds that I give them. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah.
So that's the point. That's the ticket right there. Knowing how to get them to fly condition, and knowing how to get them to the performance condition. That's what's very important, you know.
So talking about your rollers, your family, what bloodlines do you have in your family that you're flying?
Well, like I said, I started with the Rick Me birds, and then I got a hold of the J Starley birds, and I was working with those for a while. Chris Summerhays out here blessed me with some of the South African birds he got, who he was working with. So I've been working with those birds since 2014, and I've been working with those birds. Chris Summerhays birds I got around 2016. But anyhow, I was working with those birds, and I got some birds from Mark Ritter. I got a couple birds from Gabe Glenn. And I just been working with that, man, to be honest with you. And, you know, what I started doing is I started to work with the birds and started picking out the best out of like the performers, then then I'll pair them up and find the best breeders. And so I wasn't to the like going wild on this, you know. I mean, I've been doing my homework on it, studying, writing notes and stuff like that. So I got to learn the birds real good, you know. So I got it to the point where out of those birds right now, I have like about 6 7 pairs. That's it. And I'm not even working with pairs right now. I'm doing a bully system. To be honest, it's not all about, you know, whose birds you have. You know, of course, do your homework and go get the best birds that you could get. and a lot of people say keep it one family, and you can't fly different families together. You know what? I don't think that's true. You know what I mean? I've been successful with flying different families, and it works for me.
Yeah, those South Africans are getting pretty popular. Have you noticed anything that makes them different in the way that you're conditioning your birds than other bloodlines?
Well, at first, they were pretty hot, man. I started getting some that were pretty hot, and I gotta every year I'll get a roll down, and then I just started tracking down where that was coming from, and I what I did is I eliminated everything that went down through that pedigree that was coming from the birds, and I chose just the very best. And to be honest with you, I don't know, man. Like a lot of people say, oh, these birds they fly too high on this feed, these birds just flies low and slow. You know what? If I fly everything together, if I see that a bird ain't working with the team, I get rid of it. To a certain point, it's got to be where everything I have is working the same.
So you can have different bloodlines and they're real cohesive. You can
Yeah,
get results out of them and
yeah, they gotta adapt to my program. You know what I
right.
mean? If
Yeah.
they can't adapt to my program, then they ain't gonna make it in my yard, period. You know what I'm saying? And that's the mentality that we all have to have. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, man. I was a softie with these birds, man. I love them birds, and you know what? I was giving them too many chances, man. Too many chances. One day, I just went in my loft. A gentleman came out here and helped me out, and taught me a few things, and we went over our birds, and I'll be honest, I cold hard, man, and I was left with hardly nothing. And I was like telling myself, man, I think I made a mistake. And this was in 2020. And I got rid of almost everything. I was just left with a few pairs, two pairs of Starlies, two pairs of the South Africans. I had only one cock rigged me. And I was like, man, and I was being a hoarder, man. I'll be honest with you. And the very next year, all the young birds I bred out in 2020, the next year, man, I placed ninth in the nation, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you started from scratch and you got quality, not quantity.
Yeah, quality. And you know what? I was looking at producers because the producers and able to make it in the breeding loft, they needed to be good performers. And what I started doing is the good performers that I was picking, I'll put them in a cage, and then I'll handle them and I'll grade them. And then the ones that I thought were the best in health and everything, in on my hand, I picked the best cock, the best hen, pair that up. I picked
There
the
you go.
second bet to the second bet, pair that. And that's how I went, man. Man, I'm telling you, the next year it was man, I could see a different, man. I started getting early development, a faster spin. It's amazing, man. And before I was just breeding 20 pairs or something like that. And I just couldn't understand nothing because there's just too much of everything,
Yeah, yeah, you get kind of overwhelmed with the numbers and you're trying to see good ones, but you're looking at so much. Man, that's interesting because we'll talk to racer guys, roller guys, fancy guys, and one of the common threads is success in any way, it comes from good stock sense.
Yeah.
That's where you want to be at with it. You want to know what you can put together and every time they're going to produce something that you want.
Yeah. And then you start familiaring yourself with certain traits and stuff like that. And then there's just so many birds, you know what I'm saying, that could come out of the few birds that you're working with, to where now I could be in my loft and I was like, oh man, I'm missing one bird. And sure enough, it's on top of the loft. They didn't trap in, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so you start to kind of familiar yourself with the birds, and knowing what needs to be done, what bad traits are that you need to get rid of and stuff like that. And I think the big problem we have is a lot of people seem to want to breed out of so much and breed so much, you know what I mean? And it just it's a lot of chaos, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit because you'd mentioned this a little bit earlier that you had gone to school for filming and things like that. And last time we talked, you had talked about some of the different documentaries and things like that you were getting into. So what's the future look like for you? You going to be doing some more of those?
Yeah, yeah. So what I want to start doing is okay, like right now the documentaries that I'm doing, it's all in my head. Like I don't script nothing. I just put it together in my head. And what I do is I go online and I start looking. I love to look at documentaries. I watch documentaries every single day. I watch documentaries. So I'll find a documentary that I like and I'll memorize the way it's kind of put together, and then I'll go and film it. But now I want to do more of a storyline. I mean, I want to start scripting what I want to film. I want to start kind of putting together images or footage how I want them. Like I'm gonna film this one a wide view, close up and stuff like that. So I want to script everything and then go actually film it like I'm filming a film, actual film. You know what I mean? Like a yeah, like a movie type of thing. So that's what my future looks like. And then I want to start blogging. I want to start doing more blogs of the projects I'm doing so that people could kind of understand more of what I'm doing. Like I'll start at a certain point and within 3 years they could be like, man, I remember he started this 3 years ago. Look at where he's at now. You know what I mean? So I want to start blogging that, and that's what's next. So
Okay.
I got a lot of good things I want to do, and then one really good project I want to do is I want to do a reality show, the first reality show within the roller hobby. So I'm putting that together right now. Like I got it. I talked to another film guy, and we're gonna go over it, go over the budget and all that. But it's gonna be real good, very professionally made. It's going to be like a competition, and I want to start off with like 3 regions, right? And then just film those 3 regions with their best flyer, make it a little exciting, a little shit talking and all that. The winner of that one will, be the winner of that. That'll be one season. The second season will be another three regions. Then the third season will be another 3 regions, and then like the final season will be the winner of all the regions, and they're gonna do the final, and it's gonna be a few seasons, and then I want to have like maybe 6 episodes to each season. So yeah, I really want to do that.
You got any more travel plans, or were you going to be going to check out any other lofts and talk to other roller guys?
Well, we got the convention coming up here on in a couple weeks. So the co-host that I have on the podcast, Ray Lewis, he mentioned to me that he wants to interview people out there. So I'm gonna take my gear out there. But my main one that I want to do next, I think, is South Africa. I want to go to South Africa for 2 weeks, film the winner of their regions for the World Cup. And so that's going to be one week. And then the second week, I want to go out and film all the lofts, all the flyers out there. So I want to do that. That one's going to be a really good one. So I got time to put that together.
Excellent. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the NBRC convention coming up in Ohio. Is it the 12th, 13th,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that? So
Yeah.
you guys, you're a member of the VFRC Velocity First Roller Club, and you guys put on a couple launch shows to fundraise, and you guys hosted when the NBRC had their convention out here in Phoenix, which had lots of good reviews. People really enjoyed it. That was a good time. Got to drive around and see everybody fly their birds. Can we talk a little bit about the convention coming up in Ohio?
The convention to me is the biggest like launch show there is,
There you go.
of the
Yeah,
of the
nice.
of the year. You know what I mean? And I recommend everybody go out and check it out because you get to see the faces that you normally don't see online, and you get to BS with everybody. They you get on the bus, and camaraderie all the way. You know what I mean? And it's just a good event, man, to see all the people, man, that's in this hobby here in the United States. And even we got guys traveling from other countries that come over here, you know what I mean? But it's a good way to kind of go and talk one to one with someone that you admire, or that someone that you like, period. There are a lot of legends in this hobby that attend that. We had a few Hall of Famers and gather up together to where we're able to interview them on the convention here in Arizona. And it just you don't get that, you don't get that anytime, so it's a good event. And the guys from Ohio, man, I've been to Ohio twice. Got to go see Gabe Glenn and John Bender. sit down with Joe Rowe. You guys, they're gonna have two World Cup champions over there. You know, Joe Rowe and John Bender, the first two American World Cup champions here in the United States. Man, you're gonna be a blessing, man.
Yeah, all those roller guys all in one place for a short time. I mean, that's gonna be. I like that. I never heard that term. Like it's a big launch show. That's cool. That's good.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
3 days long, and you get to go around and watch other people fly. So that would definitely be a good thing, especially if you're into the rollers specifically, or if you're an NBRC member. Yeah, make the effort, get out there. You know, carpool with someone if you gotta save some gas or whatever. But
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
once a year they put on these conventions, and you know they're for roller people.
Yeah, and then the NBRC, they've been around for many, many years, man. So it's just the biggest club out here. It's the national club, and just support that period, man. A lot of these guys, I'm gonna tell you right now, man, it's a lot of work to put these things together, and your support is a big thing, man. You go out there and you're supporting the club, and we could have these every year, man. I mean, it's a vacay, you know what I mean?
There you go. Yeah.
And with pigeons, I like everywhere I tell my wife, my wife be like, where we going for vacation? Oh, and I try to figure out somewhere where there's roller people,
Yep. Yeah.
So,
I
but
mean,
this one right here, man, is nothing but roller people.
no,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I want to thank you for, everything that you've done in promoting the hobby. You know, you definitely put yourself out there, and I mean it's a lot of work that it takes to do what you've been doing, and thanks for doing that. Thanks for coming on and talking with us today. And any roller guys out there, definitely if you're not familiar with the NBRC, the National Birmingham Roller Club, this is, if you're a roller guy, you gotta join up with them. They really do a lot for the roller community. You can check out Chacon Lofts on Facebook and his YouTube channel, Roll Call. So thanks for
yeah.
coming on, Jerry. This has been great.
Yeah, for sure, man. And if there's anybody out there that is not a roller guy and would like to put a little documentary together, man, reach out at me, man. I'll love to do it, man. That's my passion, man. Pigeons.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the All About Pigeons podcast. Please help the pigeon hobby by telling your fellow club members or other pigeon friends about the podcast, and make sure to leave a good review or at least a 5-star for the podcast wherever you listen. If you have a topic or a person you want to hear more about on the podcast, or if you yourself would like to be a guest, just send an email to allaboutpigeonspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.